Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the C-Man, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the C-Man's Cinema Sit-Down. Now, if you've been following along, you know at the beginning of November, kind of took a breather on the reviews. That 31 days of Spooktober with 31 reviews took a lot out of me, and I just kind of chilled and watched stuff. Last week we talked about the TV that I was checking out. One of my favorite series and shows of the year, The Queen's Gambit, was in that crop of television shows, and now we're going to talk about that movie crop that I was checking out, which ironically enough are all horror films. I'm always in the mood for a horror movie, but coming out of Halloween, the actual Halloween itself, right at the beginning of November, I was like, more horror movies. I'm still in that spooky kind of mood, and what's great here is out of this crop of horror movies, one of my favorite horror movies of the year is in there. So I got to watch some good stuff while I was taking a breather. And I'm really, really pumped to talk about this one. So why don't you pull up a chair, man, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in, spoiler free, into Netflix's His House. And I wish I could take credit for stumbling across this one. You know, like I was on Netflix and I came across it. But that's not how it worked. Much like Relic, when I watched that and reviewed that, that was because I saw Perry Nemiroff say something on her YouTube page. Perry's from Collider.com, huge horror movie fan, and I trust her when she says things about horror movies, specifically when she says good things, and specifically when they're movies that I'm unfamiliar with. She said Relic was one of the best movies of the year. I checked that out, and she was spot on. And when I saw her review for His House go up, it said Netflix has one of the best horror movies of 2020. And I was like, all right, we're throwing out the big words again, Perry. I'm going to go check this out. And sure enough, 2 for 2, Miss Perry Nemiroff, this is one of the best horror movies of the year. And the reason it's one of the best horror movies of the year is much like Relic, it not only delivers on the scary stuff and the horror components, and specifically here, again, like Relic, the haunted house components, but it also delivers a really, really rich story that involves, refugees and the perspective of refugee camps, specifically here in Great Britain, and what it's like to be a refugee and get out of that country or situation that has you fleeing, and if you have to take a dangerous journey to do it, which most refugees usually have to, what happens when you make it and other people don't. That survivor's guilt and just, the feeling of like leaving your home and abandoning those people. And Remy Weeks, the writer-director here, first-time writer-director. I tell you, 2020 has been a really good year for first-timers. I mean, Max Barbacow with Palm Springs was excellent. As I've mentioned many a times already in this video, Relic was another movie that I absolutely adored, and Natalie Erica James crushed in her feature film debut. And Remy Weeks, much like those guys, also crushes in his feature film debut. The story of these 2 refugees who flee Sudan and get placed in a house somewhere in England, and then that house ends up being haunted, or haunted type things are kind of going on after they get there, is just a story that I was able to connect with because it's content and storytelling that you hear about, especially here in the States, we hear plenty about, refugee camps and some of the things that have gone on there with separating kids from their families. But it's something that I don't really know a lot about. And getting to see this perspective from a pair of Sudanese refugees and what they kind of go through, both in the experience of, being in one of these refugee camps, which in the movie here is kind of like a college dorm room, like a set of them, like you see, and it looks very much like a small, college dorm room, and there's like 3 or 4 people in those rooms. And then when they get placed in that house, what all that process is like. I mean, they kind of touch on all those things and the things that are, not working in that realm, while also bringing in this really, really interesting story for these 2 characters, Bol and Rial Majer, who were played by Soap Darisu and Wunmi Masaku, who, if I ever post my Lovecraft Country reviews, you'll know I'm a huge fan of Wunmi Masaku now. And we kind of follow them as they get out of Sudan and get placed, and then ghost things start happening in the house. And I really love, like I said, the story that Weeks tells here. He has something to say, and all of those things kind of bring to light thing is that I think more people need to get their eyeballs on and talk about. And I love being able to utilize the horror genre to tell stories like this. Like, you're able to hit all the marks in the horror realm. Weeks knocks it out with, like I said, the haunted house stuff. The scares are good. There is really scary imagery in this movie. But he's also able to tell a very rich and compelling story that, showed, at least me, something that I'm kind of unfamiliar with, and gave me a story and perspective of a culture and a group of people that's totally different from mine. And that's one of the reasons that I love film so much. So when you can do that in a movie, I'm going to be really excited about it. And on top of just having a really good script, Weeks definitely knows how to craft a horror movie, specifically a haunted house movie. Like I said, the scares are legit, and he earns them. He builds really nice tension that gives you those nice jumps every once in a while also giving you those scares that get under your skin and just make your whole body crawl. And I mean, the imagery, let alone, just the way he shoots this thing, it's gorgeous. I really like the vision that Weeks had for this movie and the way that he shoots it and tells this story visually. The visual storytelling in it is just as strong as the written story in it. And, this image right here is literally right out of the movie. You get things like this that play with reality and what you're seeing, and are you dreaming and are you awake, and is able to give you really terrifying imagery when it comes to the ghosts that are in the movie. And the other thing that I love, and is one of these things that allows the actors to really shine, is the perspective of each character and what they are experiencing with everything that's going on. It ties into their culture, ties into the people that they are, and it ties directly into the story that we're looking at. And the story that we're looking at, Weeks offers us some interesting twists and turns as we go through it, and you get kind of hit with stuff that you don't see coming. You're like, that's what's going on. Okay, I really dig this. And like I said, having these different perspectives allow you to get really powerful yet different performances. And Soap Derisu, he's a big bad dude. Like, he's scary in the sense that he's an imposing figure, and his performance, while stellar, really shines in the horror department. Watching this huge dude get scared, and scared to your core, scares the living crap out of you, and he really full-on commits the physicality to his performance. And this is a performance that doesn't have a lot of physicalness to its nature, but the physicality and how much he puts into those moments sell him so well, and really help you get lost in this world, so that you don't think I'm just watching a movie, I'm in my apartment. You get brought to this place and you just live in it. And then what Wunmi Masako is able to do with a totally different perspective on what's going on and how she handles the haunting that's happening to them, it is really interesting. And then how she and Derisu, work through and deal with the emotions that they're going through from running away from Sudan and coming, to Great Britain. And Masako is just phenomenal, man. She is a strong, powerful woman who brings performances that, so far to this point, back up, what she is as a person. And she knocks it out of the ballpark, man. She got me to roll a tear in this movie. You can make me roll a tear. You were doing really good things. And the emotional beats really hit home with her story, or her side of the story, that then add the emotional beat to Bowles in a way where the movie kind of shift as you're kind of watching. You're pulling for one guy, then you're kind of understanding the other person. And the emotional beats that Masaku's story brings in, like I said, enhances even Bowles' emotional beats. And overall, their story is just really interesting, and they give rock-solid performances. And then it always helps when you can have a nice supporting actor to show up in a movie like this. And Matt Smith, who you should all know from The Crown, or, if you're a diehard nerd, the 11th Doctor from Doctor Who, he shows up here as, the person who's in charge of these two people. He, brings them to the house, gets them all set up. If they have any questions, he's the one that they go to. And I like Matt Smith. He's super charming, and he brings that to this performance and kind of gives you some lighter moments. While the stuff that's going on isn't technically light, as far as what's going on with the refugees from a general perspective. But the type of person that Smith's character is and how he approaches things kind of just adds a little bit of non-scary for us to go to every once in a while to kind of cut that tension. And I like the way that they utilize him to also show some of the stuff that's really wrong in this world. Like, you have his partner, I think, mentions, my house doesn't have this many rooms, but your house also isn't completely trashed, and there's garbage outside and inside. And granted, if you clean it up and you fix it up, you're probably in a better spot than where you're running from, but it's not a great spot technically. And how Smith reacts to some of the things that are going on, and just how that world works, from the other side of things, like what the business angle of these refugee camps is about. I like being able to touch that, and like I said, Matt Smith just gives a really solid performance like he always does. And at the end of the day, top to bottom for me, His House is just a rock solid horror film, and just a rock solid film in general. Like I said, I love when you can take this genre and execute, and Weeks executes on all the horror stuff. And because he executes on all the horror stuff, the added story elements work better, because you're like, okay, I got what I came for, and you gave me something that I didn't know I was coming for. And like I said, the way the movie moves and the twists and turns they throws in there, just really, really effective, and just really, really top-end story and visual storytelling. So for me, His House, a whole big bucket of win in the horror community. Now I know what you're thinking, man. Did you have a chance to check out His House? If you did, what'd you think, man? Did you like having this story about refugees built into this horror movie? Did you think it meshed well with the story that they were trying to tell in this genre? Or did it not work for you? Would you just have preferred it to be a jump scare movie? What did you think of Weeks, from the way he shoots the movie, to the story, to just how the whole thing operates, and the twists and turns, and just different things that we get to see? Did it creep you out? Did it make you jump at all? Anything good, bad, or indifferent? If you saw the movie, and of course if you didn't, has the old C-Man enticed you to want to check it out? I hope so, man. Hopefully, you like a movie that can add a little bit more than just some good scares. And if you do, I think this is a worthwhile watch. But let me know where you land. Do you prefer just like a jump scare movie when you're going for your horror? Or do you prefer something that can give you that and then some? Anything you're thinking, good, bad, indifferent about His House, down below in the comments section. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man and you haven't yet, want to show a little love, support, just like we're doing here at the channel, jump over there, man. Join C-Maniac Nation by hitting that subscribe button. Hit that little bell afterwards if you want those alerts. And until next time, the C-Man's Cinema. Sit down. I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Well, that's all live and breathe. You still here? Check out a video like this one or this one. And hit the subscribe button so you can get alerts and check out everything the C-Man's got at the Cinema Sit Down.